everyone, Scott Hanson here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. We are back. Sorry for the hiatus. It's been a crazy time. So crazy, we're not even live. We've had to do this at a completely different time. So if you do post your questions as you normally do and appreciate all the engagement and you're not getting much engagement back, it's not live. So that's a quick insight into how I am back reunited with my good pal, Danny. Danny, how the devil are you?
All good. Very, very busy. Kid, family birthdays, daughter's birthday tomorrow. Loads of stuff to do. So, yeah, we'll just get on to it. Let's get into it.
You've had multiple birthdays, multiple things, family commitments. I've had family commitments, traveling. It's been a crazy time. We're getting into December. It's going to get more so. But you know what the craziest time of the year is? It's week 14. This is it. By Monday, Tuesday, that is it for the fantasy regular season. It's already gone. It's been that quick. And we're here to get you out ASAP with the top tips of the week. Not just for the week now, but now every week is a playoff. Every week is about winning. And there's so much disruption in terms of injuries, in terms of bye weeks. It's chaos out there at the moment. What are you doing for your teams at the moment, Danny?
Chaos is what I love. It makes it interesting, and the more time you put into it, the better results you get as a result of it as well. So a lot of stuff, to be honest. I have an Excel sheet where I'm tracking all my teams. So I've got one for redraft and one for dynasty. So I've got 12 redraft teams, and I know that I've got 9 of them already in the playoffs. So I'm already planning for the next week more than this week in a few cases, especially Warrior Bowl, because I managed to win the group, which means I get a bye in week 15 as well. So this week doesn't even matter. Next week doesn't matter. So I'm already looking at how in week 16, what are the best anyone on that free list that I can bring in now that will help me in week 16. So I'm not just looking this week. I'm looking sort of 2 weeks ahead, depending on the comps as well. There's a few others there where I've got buys in 15 because I've come in the top 2. So I'm planning straight away for the week after for them as well. So I just like to visually see where all my teams are. And then I can start saying, okay, these are the ones that I need to focus on this week. So like my 2 big ones, I could get relegated in both of them. I've had great seasons with most of my other teams, but these 2 are important to me. So a lot of my focus has been on the one IDP one that I do, and then the Orkney Bowl one, which I won a couple of years ago. And it's an absolute nightmare of a competition. That literally there's 2 wins separating first and 11th, I think. Mm-hmm. So I could come 11th, I could come 5th, top 6 stay up, bottom 6 go in playoff. So there's so many different things that can happen. But if you go all in for this week, you might kill yourself when you've got to play in the playoffs to try and stay in it next week as well. So I just try and get it all down, where I am, how many wins I need to get to the playoffs. So if I'm already there, which teams do I need to focus on? And then I start looking through the lists and then mainly try to make sure I've got the best DST team I can get for every team, the best kicker I can get. And if that means taking the other ones out and repurposing them with other ones, then I'll do that every week. And that's what I'm mainly doing, and just constantly checking waiver wires for news as well. You know, if someone's out, how's that going to impact? Like I was asking you about Wilson before, because I've got him in the league that I need to win, and it's like I'll only start him if I know Harrison's out, because it might give him a bit of a bump. There's all those types of things, like so many different things to think of. But it's visually helps for me. I've seen them all in a sheet and seeing exactly where I am for everything.
And I think that's a really good point, because this is the time of the year you have to really evaluate your roster, and you have to evaluate every single spot on the roster.
And you have a limited time to do it as well. So it's like where are my fires that I need to put out now?
Yeah, and I think what people tend to do, this is the mistake that people tend to have. They stockpile players through the season, right? So what you do is you stockpile all these players, and then you get to the end of the season, so you get to now, and you've got all these players on your bench, but actually none of those players are ever going to appear. Yeah. You're kind of like you're either blocking or you're stockpiling. Give you a great example, Jordan Addison. Now, if you're a playoff team right now, You're holding on to Jordan Addison because you don't want anyone else to pick him up. But the bottom half teams are going to be eliminated from your league on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
matter, yeah.
And he's not good enough to be in the playoffs. Like he holds no value come Tuesday, like none. So what you want to do is you want to get to Sunday and drop him so that he can't be picked up by anybody else, especially anyone that's quite near to you in the standings, and pick someone else up. And evaluate your roster. If you're just holding and stockpiling players, you think I would never put that player in the team. They got to go. Like you've got to cut players. All these sort of deep handcuffs that we've been talking about for the last few weeks,
they're starting to come in.
They are, but also at the same point that you now have multiple tiers of handcuffs. So you have the handcuff will come in and be fantasy ready and will be an immediate fantasy impact. And then you've got the handcuffs that will come in and do very, very little. Example of this is like Devin Neal. Devin Neal is like borderline, like he is the line of fantasy relevant, like will move a needle in a lineup kind of running back. The people below him, the Bam Knights of this world, they don't hold any value anymore because even when they start, they're not pushing the value up. You're not going to get these premium fantasy finishes out of these players. We've seen it all season. That's great when you need bye week cover and you need to get something and you're blocking people to stop them from raising their floor. But in the playoffs, every team is good. So they're not going to get into many starting rosters when you cut them down.
Yeah.
So, you need to cut those players. It's really significant. Like you have to basically go through your roster, match it up to lineups and go, is this player a top 12 quarterback? Are they a top 24 running back? Are they a top 24 wide receiver? Are they a top 12 tight end? And if the answer is no, then the next question is, what are they? So if they're a flex and it's a deeper league with lots of flex spots, then fine. If it's a shallow league, then you go, do I have any? How do I rank my flex players? Like at this point, you should have the only reason you're holding two quarterbacks is if you've got Drake May. So he's on your bench, and then you've got whoever you're playing this week. Anyone else, you really shouldn't have two quarterbacks. Maybe Jackson Dart.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Jackson. I've actually picked him up in a few this week for that reason, just because I actually like him for the next couple of weeks after, and I'm thinking I've the ones where you might have 7 or 8 bench spots. So like if it was 4 or 5, then maybe not. But it's like I've actually picked him up because I think he might be sneaky for a few weeks afterwards.
Yeah, I think you just have to look at your bench and you have to think, there's so much hoarding going on. Like if you've got a player like a Jordan Addison, even like a Xavier Worthy to a degree, a player who's not going to come in and really move the needle all that much, you need to shoot for the higher ceiling players like the Adonai Mitchells. You need to make sure that each person you've got, there's a significant value attachment to them. You can't just stockpile players. If you've got like Trevor Lawrence on your bench, he needs to go. You have to start making those tough cuts. Brian Robinson will probably be dropped in more leagues this week than in any other week of the year. That's an opportunity ad. That's someone I'd be bringing onto my roster if something happened to Christian McCaffrey next week. Know you're going to get a high volume, high production player out of there.
That just reminds me, you've just made me think of something then. Another thing that I did for planning for this week was I went through all the the waivers that went through on Wednesday and Thursday and just went through who everybody dropped and thought, do I want any of them? Because people are like, Brock Purdy's being dropped in a few of mine as well. And he's not playing this week, but 15 could be decent. A lot of my quarterbacks I sort of streamed. So like Purdy and what's his name, Jackson Dart could actually be improvements on some of mine in week 15. So I went through all of them to see, is there anyone I wanted? And some of those running backs get dropped.
Yeah. I have 7, basically what I call like non-negotiables. One of them you can kind of flex out for something else, right? And these are like my non-negotiables for the playoffs. So, you can use these and you can really get tight with these, but this is what you need to do if you want to win fantasy leagues from now on out. The first one is, and we've talked about this, right? You've got to be aggressive on the waiver wire, right? You've got to pick up those players that are going to move the needle. You have to do it now, whether they've just been dropped, whether they're still out there. Get rid of anyone that's kind of just not going to move your needle. It's so important that you do that. You need to be ruthless. If you've got 2 DSTs, 2 kickers, 2 tight ends, cut them. Like, you got to cut it. You got to be really, really bold to cut as much as possible. Like, honestly, that's so important. Because if you don't do that and you've just got fodder on your bench, then, if an injury goes down, you're kind of half dead. So you've got to be really, really careful. And then when it comes to those picking up players, if you've clinched, you need to start blocking your opponents. So the only time I advocate having multiple DSTs, multiple DSTs, is I know who I'm playing in week 15 or week 16. And I'm like, I'm going to pick the best DST up so that team can't. If you know that they're streaming, that might be a 3-4 point move. That 3-4 point move might be the difference between you winning and you advancing to your fantasy championship and you not. The same at the quarterback. If they're streaming any position, pick the best available streamer for week 16. If you're not sure who they are, drop us a question. Write a comment below saying, I want to know who the best week 16, best week 15 options are. And we'll tell you. Like, I'll reply in the comments. So drop a comment below. And you can do that. And we'll tell you who to prepare, who to pick up, who are the best options. Because what you don't want to do is, if you've clinched, you got to buy. If you're the 1 and 2 seed, this week doesn't matter. Next week, as you say in that Warrior Bowl example, next 2 weeks don't matter. So this is your time. This is what you're buying that advantage for. Stockpile week 16. Look at those best matchups, best quarterback option, best streaming options, and just take that off the board because you can pretty much predict. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? It's something I've done for the Warrior Bowl, and I just thought it's a good example to give out to see what you think, because you might say, "Oh, I would definitely not do that." But I'm in round 16, and it's going to be obviously hardly anyone qualifying from that point to go to 17. But what I've done is I've got 3 main running backs. I've got McCaffrey, I've got Javonte Williams, and I've got Barkley. And what I've done I already had Brian Robinson, but I've also picked up Davis from. So I've got both Cowboys running backs. I've got both 49ers in case one of them gets picked injured. I've got the other one, and then I couldn't get Barkley's one. But I know realistically, at least I've got 2 running backs right the way through. Hopefully, I've got the 3 main ones that I want. But Warrior Bowl has a decent sized bench, so I suppose it's not really a Warrior Bowl question. It's more of a general question of when would you do that and when would you not do that.
So this is the one part of the season where handcuffing your own running backs is fine, but it depends on the role. So I would say with the 2 that you've got, the handcuffs 2, they're the 2 roles that you would say are the most important. Like, if Christian McCaffrey goes down tomorrow, Brian Robinson is the elite running back handcuff available. Not just in terms of for the 49ers, but in terms of for fantasy football.
Yeah.
You would say that Malik Davis is probably a top 10 option. So the question is, at least if those players go down, you're going to get almost not quite like for like production, but you're still going to get significant production.
And I wouldn't be able to find anyone else.
You won't be able to find anyone else. So that's the offset is at that point, gambling your own handcuff versus someone else's is smart. Where in a tournament like a Warrior Bowl, where it's what we would call negative EV, is that your team gets worse even with the handcuff.
Yeah.
The field gets better. So in a Warrior Bowl, I would actually handcuff others because, to be honest, if you lose Christian McCaffrey, if you lose Christian McCaffrey, you can't replace him. You do get an arrow down. So like your team gets an arrow down regardless. But if someone else and again, it's slightly different because you'll be like one of only 2 in your division to progress, but you're basically denying your opponents from having those options. Where it's different in tournament play is that what you're trying to do is just move your floor as high as possible. So if, having Brian Robinson over Christian McCaffrey, it doesn't help you unless there's multiple out. Yeah. But having multiple handcuffs and then, say, for example, Saquon Barkley, and all of a sudden Jahmyr Gibbs goes down and you've got David Montgomery, that's an upgrade potentially in terms of what we're seeing out of Detroit right now. And I think that's where you've got to try and raise you. It's all ceiling, right? In a tournament, it's all ceiling. In a standard league, your floor is actually the risk to reward. The floor is more important. Where if your running back goes down and you don't have your handcuff and your opponent does, you're in trouble. Like you might as well exit stage left and your tournament is done.
Yeah. Whereas
if you're holding other people's running backs, that does help, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your own. So you kind of got to be a bit. It's kind of your risk reward tolerance. In the instance of like a Javonte Williams and a CMC, having those two because they're premium running back handcuffs is very different to having like a Will Shipley, who will be good, but how good will he be? By the way, this is going to give people a bit of a timestamp as to when we're recording. Marvin Harrison is out.
Nice. That's what I wanted.
Only you celebrate an injury. So you've got to really get, you've got to pick up these waiver wires. You've got to start blocking. So if you're starting to look who your opponents are going to be week 15, week 16, you can start to extrapolate who they might be, start blocking DSTs, running backs, pick up their handcuffs if you've got space. Think about where they're streaming. Are they streaming tight ends? Pick the best streaming tight end option up. Pick the best streaming quarterback option up if they're streaming quarterbacks. Making sure you've got all of those. Really start blocking your opponent and stopping them from getting their best possible streaming options, because that's going to give you a great option. And stream yourself. Pick up your best streaming options. This is what you talk about really well, Danny. If you're thinking of the playoffs, you need a Cleveland, a Rams, a Houston. They're the teams that you really want to be getting these streaming DSTs for, and kickers as well. They've also just announced, by the way, Arizona, that Kyler Murray will not play this season.
I've seen that as well, yeah.
So
he's going, isn't he?
He's going to be gone. So you got to make sure you're block your opponents, stream those friendly DSTs. And again, if you want to know who the best DSTs are week 15, 16, 17, drop a comment below. We'll reply. We'll tell you.
What's the Patriots like? Because they're going to get dropped by a lot of people this week, aren't they? Being on the bye.
Patriots will be dropped a significant amount. If I just pull up their schedule, their schedule is not amazing. It's I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's amazing. Oh no, it's pretty good. It's eighth best.
Yeah, because that could be one for people to stash this week if they want to wait.
Yeah, so there's quite a few good schedules out there. Tampa Bay have a really good schedule for the fantasy playoffs. A lot of people would have added them this week. Green Bay is a good one if you're stacking them. Buffalo, the Jets, they're all pretty decent. Pittsburgh, of course. But again, Houston, what we've talked about. So make sure you're stacking those DSTs, you're streaming them, and kickers as well. Making sure you're getting those options locked down so your opponents don't. It's really important. And as I said, you evaluate your team and you're working out who are the top 24 options, who are the top 12 options, who are your flex options, and who's a no-go option. And strip the no-goes. Like, just get them off your team. But if you're like, I'm just worried about the teams below, they pick them up, they might get a win, then do it on Sunday, because then they can't pick them up Sunday, and then it's all done. There's no Trey Benson as well this week, just FYI. So we'll be Bam night to go this week. So that's what you're doing with you've got to look at your start sits now. So this is where you've got to start looking at wide receiver matchups. You're looking at those tough matchups over the next couple of weeks. You're looking at where there's down schedules, you're looking at those teams that are particularly good against certain positions. Like, you know, that if you've got a team playing like Minnesota or Washington or Cleveland over the next 3 weeks, you know that's a difficult matchup from a quarterback perspective. You know that if they're, there's many teams you can start to look at and try and say, okay, these are really difficult teams to score on across all the positions. And again, if you want to know all that information, just a conscious of time, just let us know below and we'll share that information.
Give us 30 seconds on Lamar, because he seems to be...
I think he's crocked. I think he's crocked. I think he looks injured. He doesn't look like he's his free-flowing self. I think he's a significant concern in your fantasy playoffs. Does he improve? Potentially. Does he get better every week? Maybe. In truth, this week, I think he's going to tell you an awful lot. I think if he puts up another low performance again this week, and they move further out of contention for the playoffs, there's a chance they could shut him down. I think you've got to be prepared for that. I think you've got to start looking at your backup options with someone like him.
Okay, cool.
So we've talked about my non-negotiables about being aggressive on the waiver wire, using a blocking strategy, streaming your DSTs and kickers and doing that now based on schedule, and then nailing those start-sit calls is so important, like really massive. And then the fifth one is, and we've talked about this, securing your handcuffs to your RB1s if they're the high-profile ones, or stacking other handcuffs is really important. So they're the five that are pretty much like you've got to absolutely nail. The additional ones for this, and this is the stuff that absolutely no one really thinks about. Maybe there's one that might be that people do kind of do, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, which is stacking. Now, stacking in redraft is a bit of a controversial opinion, because in best ball people do it, because if you've got a good offense and you've got the most pieces on that offense, then it kind of works. In redraft, it's harder to predict because it's a seasonality of a week-to-week change, and it's not going to automatically load up the best performing players from that offense. However, stacking really good matchups in the playoffs is fundamental to success. So if you have a stack, an LA stack, a Cincinnati stack, this is the time to really lean into that strategy and really hit it home. This is where you could have made some trades to add to the stack. If your trading's still open, it probably isn't. But the other really thing is that if you can get a quarterback, wide receiver, tight end stack at this point in the season, then this is the time to really leverage that.
I've got one for Warrior Bowl. And so when we were talking about those running backs, it didn't go so well for me last night, but it went great the week before. I've got the Dak, Javonte Williams, and I've got Pickens stack. So Pickens didn't do much last night, but the week before it went really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really key. I'm just checking something. But yeah, I think it's really important to do that. And I think what's really important is just having that stack, if you've got it, to lean into it. That's going to be a really, really important piece to do. The next one, and almost no one does this, is to check the weather of games. So games that are going to be, you got December, we're going to get wind, we're going to get snow, we're going to get rain, temperatures are going to drop. Dome versus no dome. Like for me, I'm not starting a kicker that's not playing in a dome in December, unless they're in Florida. Like, let's not do that, right? Start your kickers if they're in a dome. Great. Lean into those matches that have dome versus outside. Games that are in Buffalo, New England, Green Bay. These are all places to get notoriously very cold and very, very difficult. If they're in LA, if they're in Florida, if they're in Texas, probably going to be okay. But lean into those matchups. That's really, really important. And also monitor the over-under of games. We talked about this a few weeks ago, but what's really important is to really lean into those over-unders. and understanding what the over-under line set at. So, for example, looking in week 14, there's not much of me that will want to touch anything to do with the Dolphins or the Jets unless there's absolute necessity or you've got Devon Achane. Titans-Browns is exactly the same. Titans-Browns, you're looking at one of the lowest over-under totals of the season at 33.5. Steelers-Ravens is quite low, for example. Saints-Bucks is low. You want to be leaning into the matchups like Bills-Bengals. The Cardinals-Rams. These are the games you want to be looking at. Cowboys-Lions we saw was a huge one last night. But you want to be leaning into those higher volume games on the over-under. So go find a website. And again, if you don't know one, feel free to hit us up. I'll share.
It's in the Discord. You've shared it in the Discord before.
Yeah.
That was one thing I did notice because I was looking at the lines earlier in the week. They seem quite low this week in general.
They're really low.
So
they're really low.
It's crucial.
Yeah, exactly that. And then if you take into something like the Vikings, if Max Brosnan's rolled out again, that over-under is going to tank even more. So you have to look at these over-unders. They're really important. They are going to really make start-sit decisions much easier. You have to fade out games that are going to be low scoring unless you've got the key piece. So like if you've got Devon Achane, then he is matchup proof. It doesn't matter. Whether it's the Jets, whether it's whoever, that doesn't matter. But if you've got someone like, I hate to pick on him again, Jordan Addison, it's probably a fade because it's always low over-under totals. If you're looking at players that, Devon Vile in a non-PPR league is probably not a good option this week because he's a volume-based receiver. The points total's low. He's not likely going to get in the box. It's probably better options out there for you. Now, in a PPR, and he's going to get 13 catches, that's very different. But you have to look at those over-under totals. It's very, very important that you do because that's where you're going to make your decisions. That's your tiebreaker in a start-sit. If you've got two players that are very similarly ranked, look at the over-under. Make that decision on, okay, well, this game's got more points, and it's more likely my guy's going to get into the box. He's going to score a touchdown, and that's going to leap me over the edge. So really, really important, like that, like looking at the weather and looking at the over/under are those real big skills that only elite players do. Only elite fantasy players are going into that level of detail. But the reason why they continuously win is because they've got all the bases covered.
Yeah.
It's so important. Like that is just
that
everything.
Jags game seems like that's like 48.5. That's a big one, I think.
Yeah, it looks like a game that you can definitely go and exploit compared to others. I think it's really important to really hone in on that. And again, if I'm seeing if there's you tend to not get early pricing on this, and that's probably the one thing I can have a look. Actually, I might be able to. So if I look at, here we go. So week 15, right? So this is looking ahead. Just looking at where we're opening and where we are right now. Eagles Raiders is quite low. Bears Browns is low. Packers Broncos isn't particularly high. Panthers Saints is under 40. They're the games that you're probably thinking, I don't want too much of that. Whereas if you're looking at, I don't see any over. Oh, here we go. Ravens Bengals 51.5 next week. That looks like the only one that's big. Rams Lions 50.5. They're the only two big ones next week. So you could look at week 15 and saying, hey, this is more of a lower scoring week. There's not those big ceiling games. So we want to make sure we're picking those sort of mid games and higher end games. We're swerving the 39s. If you go into week 36, for example, week 16, 36. Again, just looking at that, there doesn't seem to be off the bat like many 50-point. Now these lines will change because with injuries and everything else, they will change. They're very vanilla now. But they will get more volatile and they will change as we understand the landscape of the week with more data and more information. So looking too far ahead is almost pointless because the number now is going to change quite drastically come that week. But I think that the key thing I'm looking at in week 16 and week 17 is there's not tons of high scoring games as it stands right now. So you're going to have to make sure that you're just avoiding the real low ones, because there isn't another Lions Cowboys, for example, that we saw last night. Now games can still go that way, but it's just being a bit careful. But they're the key tips and tricks for surviving the playoffs and getting an edge. And that's what people say to me, like, how do you get an edge? That's it. That's the 7 or 8 non-negotiables you have to do. You have to outwork everybody. You have to outsmart everybody, and you have to have all the bases covered. So those things, and in case you kind of been not tracking and following along, I'll read them out one more time.
Don't be scared to ask for help as well. That's the other thing. Don't be scared to ask for help. Like, just the Discord's there. Throw your questions in the Discord, and someone will answer them.
Yeah. So that be aggressive on the waiver wire. Block. Use your blocking strategy on the waiver wire. Making sure you're getting handcuffs and RB1s to either your own or the best available out there. Nailing your start-sit calls. Stream your DSTs and kickers based on schedules and picking the best ones available. If you've got stacks, you really lean onto them, especially in higher scoring games. Prepare for bad weather, making sure you're studying that, looking out for the games with severe weather, whether it's snow, wind, or rain, and make sure you do that. Obviously, really nail those start-sit calls, making sure that you understand, is your player a top 24 or top 12 player at position? If not, are they a flex? If not, get them out of your team. And then lastly, checking those over-unders and making sure you nail those. Because if you do that and you do all of that stuff, you've given yourself every opportunity to win. Now, I will say it won't guarantee you a win, but it will give you every opportunity. Because if you can get a marginal gain, you can get an extra 3-4 points a week, maybe more, doing that kind of stuff. That could be the difference between you lofting the trophy and you crying about injury luck come January.
Big time.
Is there anything else you want to pick up from the rankings, from the game profiles I shared on Patreon, which you can get for free, patreon.com/5hourrush. I write up all the week's games for free, and you can actually sign up to a discounted trial before. There's
nothing major, just a few standouts, really. I suppose that people might not think you've got as highly as what you have. If you look, there might be some people on I don't know, on waivers still. So like Stafford, you've got him as QB3 this week. I know he's having a very good season. The 3 is quite high. Jacoby Brissett, 10th. Running back wise, no real standouts. There's the normal players, really. Harvey maybe at 12 is probably higher than normal. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Bucky's back and he's at 7. Wide receiver wise, players that you might be able to still pick up. You've got Troy Franklin at 23 this week. You've got Pierce at 28. Quinton Johnson sneaking back in a little bit at 32 as well. Mitchell 33. Dubs 34. They're players that you might find in some. And then from a tight end point of view, you've got Pitts at 8. Darren Waller's starting to work his way up as well, 12th after being injured. Most of them are the ones you would expect this week. There's not loads where you go, I'm not really sure about whether to start this guy. The usual suspects are starting to work their way up in the busy time of the season, I suppose. There's not really huge amounts of shocks, but use the Discord. Like the Discord has all these rankings, and then they'll get updated again on Sunday. And check them again if you're not sure, and you can compare them. They've got them in flex ranked as well and super flex ranked. So just go and have a look at them if you're not sure.
Yeah, they're half-point PPR, so just make sure you adjust your expectations accordingly for that. So some of those sort of Vile Robinson players will be slightly lower in the ranks because of that. So yeah, make sure you go and check everything out in the Discord. Ask questions. Post questions below in the comments. Please give us a like and subscribe. Really, really important. And one last PSA for everyone out here, and it's this. We are about £300 off from our sort of super stretch goal, is what I had for this year. For our charity donations for FFCC, we are taking sign-ups for that. I doubt this is going to happen, but if we do hit that number by tonight, then I will give away 2 pieces of signed merchandise, as it looks like it's going to be just one, which is a Jeff Garcia signed 49ers style jersey. So that is going to be given away to somebody this weekend. And I'm going to try and get it out to them before Christmas. So it's here, it's in the house. So I have it. I'm looking to get that out this weekend or Monday to somebody. So if we get another £300, I'll give away something else signed, another signed piece of memorabilia, which will get to someone before Christmas. So take advantage, follow the link below, FFCC sign up, and make sure you do that. And hopefully we can get to that number. And if we don't get to it today, then we're going to do, a couple of things maybe to try and find a way to get to the number. But help us support Crohn's and Colitis UK. It is actually Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week this week. So anyone you know suffering from Crohn's and colitis, it is over 1 million people in the UK now have this disease. So, it's a really, you're going to see a lot of stuff this week around Crohn's and colitis. Feel free to, if you've seen the awareness and you're hearing the stories, donate to our page, and that's where the money goes. It goes to them. So great time to donate and be part of something special, and you can win yourself a signed goodie before Christmas. Anything else before we sign off, Danny?
Nothing, me, no.
Awesome. Well, look, everybody will be back next week for a full breakdown of the fantasy playoffs. Those non-negotiables, clip it, look after it, get it out there, study your teams, get your spreadsheets out, and go ahead and master, because now is the time to go and win. Sign up to the Discord, sign up to the Patreon, donate to FFCC, and sign up for 2026. Get absolutely everywhere. Ask the questions below. Join the Discord. Let's go and fill the harbor with as many ships as we can. But until next week, good luck in your final regular season games. And as always, keep rushing.